Good afternoon, my friends. Nice to see you all here today joining us for Musically Minded, the show in which we talk about music, brains, DJ stuff, all of that kind of stuff. Of course, I've got DJD42 here with us, joining us as usual to let us know all the good things that are going on. Your hostess assist with the most assist, DJD42 in your chat room. And in fact, why don't we just turn the microphone over to Diana most immediately so she can fill us in on all of the good things that are coming up, and then we will start diving into the turntables. So, Diana, would you please clue us in?
Sure. This Wednesday on New Music O'Clock on MTV TV, we have Unit Code Machine hosting. That'll be exciting at 5 p.m. Eastern. And then Saturday on the twitch.tv/Addambombb, we have the Wicked Party at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then, of course, next Sunday, we have another episode of Musically Minded.
All the things, many good things. And last night, actually, we had a good time last night too, and it's going on today as well. It's Empire of Beat, EBM Worldwide, and Sideline Magazine all got together to do a raid stream event for the earthquake victims in Turkey, and so we had a good set last night. DJ Loki absolutely murdered the decks last night. If you missed Loki's set last night, I'm sorry. As far as I'm aware, he didn't record the set. Oh no. Of course, I'll play my set Wednesday for reruns while we get ready for New Music O'Clock. So let's see, what are we up to today? Well, it is our 12th episode of Musically Minded, and we were going to do this last week, but I was feeling real sick. And we decided to dedicate episode 12 to the super famous Technics 1200 turntables, the ones and twos, the wheels of steel. You've heard them referred to in so many different ways, and they have really become the classic element of DJing. When you see one of these things, you think, "Oh, that's a real DJ," because they're spinning on the Tech 12s. There's a lot more reason for that than just perceptive value and mythology. Of course, there's a great deal of mythology that goes behind the Tech 12s as well, but they are incredible machines, especially for the time, but they continue to be the gold standard in DJing, and pretty much everything that that we use now in the modern age, with the controllers and all of that kind of stuff. Everything is modeled around how these things operate. So we're going to talk today all about these things, a little bit of some of the legends, a bit about the parts, a little how to get the most out of your Techniques 1200s, and I think it's going to be a pretty good show. I think we're going to have a great discussion today. Of course, if you have any questions, Diana, to just go ahead and interject and ask away. If there's any questions, of course, let us know in the chat over here. Let us know you're out there. Hey, hi everybody. But yeah, if you have any questions about the turntables as we go along, put them up into the chat and we'll get at those, of course. So where do we even begin when we're talking about these machines? I think what I want to do is I want to start a little bit before them. And talk about, hey, Razi, great to see you. I'm going to start a little bit before the Technics 1200. This is the Mark II that we're looking at right here. This is an original Mark II, and believe these came out originally in '79, and they were produced for a few years before they came out with the Mark III. I am the proud owner of 3 of these beautiful OG beasts myself, the Mark IIs, and I have a an M3D as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the differences between the different models as well. But the Mark II, I saw a in one of the DJ groups that I'm in, there was a poll, and it was all about the turntables, and which is the best version of the Technics 1200, kind of what's the best turntable. And the Mark II always rises to the top, and not by a small margin. I believe in the poll, it was over 65% in the poll were like, yeah, the Mark II is the best, voted among internet DJs. And there are a few differences between the Mark II and later models, but they're not that great. The basic functionality and in fact, all of the parts. Now, I'm a DJ, and I'm a turntable mechanic. I am a Technics 1200 mechanic specifically. Like other turntables, I don't really care as much about. Like I like the portable turntables, like the Omni and the Newmark PTO1, that kind of stuff. And I like to fuck with those. I modify them. The little portable scratch guys, the 7-inch things. I'm kind of obsessed with portablism. But mostly when it comes to turntable wizardry, I'm a 1200s mechanic, and I know these things inside and out. The service manual is pretty much burned in my brain. So I'm going to talk a bit about these beauties, and like I said, I'm going to start just a little bit before the 1200 Mark II. And of course, everybody knows the world's most famous disco club ever, Studio 54. And a lot of people think that the Studio 54 DJs were mixing on Technics turntables, but they weren't. They were actually using Thorin's turntables. I'm pretty sure it was the 125 model. It's a tank. And that model had sort of down here, it had a little pitch control, little pitch adjuster there. And now the reason that turntables have pitch controls on them in the first place is because the motors weren't always accurate, especially on belt drives. We're going to get to that in a minute. So the Thorin's 125s were belt drives. These are direct drive, and I'm going to talk about the motor in a minute. The reason that you have the pitch fader on there is that records weren't always necessarily pressed at exactly 33 and a third. A little variation, and sometimes you would need to adjust the pitch on the record slightly to get it to sound exactly right, to get it to the exact speed that the record was pressed at. And that's why it was there in the first place. But of course, what the disco DJs discovered was that that by changing the speed of the motor a little bit, it was changing the tempo of the song a little bit, and that meant that they could then match the tempo of the song on the other turntable by using these pitch adjustments. And that's pretty much where you start to get the the beat matching in disco, right? And in America anyway, it was the clubs like obviously Studio 54, or like Larry Levon at the Paradise Garage, that started using these techniques. DJ Hollywood, right? If you don't know who DJ Hollywood is, he's probably the he's probably the DJ that invented hip hop. The lingo, the rap, the patter over the music. He was an incredible party starter, an incredible party host. And he would just MC like you would not believe. If you ever get a chance to check out any of the very few live recordings of DJ Hollywood that do exist out there in internet land, check them out, because that is like very deep into the roots of what we do, and it's very worth checking out just to hear the way that he uses the microphone and controls an audience in a nightclub is amazing. And he's definitely one of those DJs that, like, his name is on the lips of the DJs who are the household names, you know what I'm saying? So check out what he would do. Back to the turntable Techniques. So the original Techniques 1200 did not have the pitch fader. Of course, it was built to be a mid-price, lower to mid-priced home turntable for audiophile use. It was meant to be a low noise, low distortion, low wow and flutter machine for listening to records. And then this thing happened. And then this thing happened. Well, so Techniques added the pitch fader on here, and that turned this machine into the best machine for beat matching. It had a broader range than the Thorns, and again, now the Thorns were a belt drive, and belts stretch and need to be replaced. And I see you all populating the chat room there, and I appreciate it. Princess, good to see you. Jaffro Music, Raziel. Again, if you have any questions about the turntables, throw them in the chat. So let's get to this topic of the motor here. Let me remove my custom slip mats, by the way, that were made by Bethany, the artist formerly known as Dethany here in Boston. Bethany Shorb, Cyber Optics, Tie Lab, what is it? Well Done Goods. Had these custom Blackheart Disco Star slip mats. The color looks kind of funny on the TV. It looks kind of orange, but they're actually red. Slip mats. We'll get to those in just a minute. All right, so let's do a cool thing here, and I'm gonna pop the platter off of this and show you the motor under here. And now this is a funny thing, right? We have this nickname for these. We call them the wheels of steel, but the wheel is not actually steel at all. It's aluminum. There's actually a fucking good reason for that, which I'm going to show you in a minute. Aluminum is not magnetic. Here, I got to get over this thing so I can do this. There we go. Aluminum's not magnetic. Steel is. So as I pop this off, what you're going to see here underneath here, this whole big thing right here in the middle, that thing that's sticking up now, is a magnet. It is a big round magnet. Look at that thing. Magnet. Isn't it beautiful? And what is cool about that is that means that the platter itself is actually part of the motor. And what you have in here, it's going to be hard to see on the camera there. The center of the motor here, there are all these little green rectangles around here. And what those do is, well, real quick, physics. Electricity is magnetism. Magnetism is electricity. And so what we're talking about here is an electromagnet, a magnetic motor. And so the electricity fires in sequence around there, and it spins the magnet that is attached to the platter, and that's how the motor basically works, without getting into too much detail about it. Yeah, the rate of that pulse is controlled with quartz. Quartz is one of those interesting things that it vibrates at a very specific frequency when electricity is fed to it, and when it's compressed, it releases electricity as well. Very cool things. That's why they use quartz in the old radios and stuff. Quartz tuning, right? Quartz tuning. And it even has the little thing here is like quartz on there, because at the time, again, this was like amazing technology, right? We're very accustomed to this technology after over 40 years of it existing now, but at the time, a quartz timed turntable is the ultimate in precision, and turntable models for audiophiles at the time that had the quartz quartz timed motors and all of that kind of stuff were twice to three times the expense of these machines. Again, I want to make it clear that part of the reason that these machines were so important is that they put it in the price point made it possible to own these things, without, on an average income, I guess. I don't know how else to say that, except that, um, um, again, the any comparable model was so much more expensive. um, so something happened. I don't remember exactly what year it was now, but the blackouts in New York, I think it was in the very late 70s, very early 80s, and around the time that the Mark IIs were coming out, and uh, and of course, um, the 70s and 80s in New York were a lot different than they are now. Like, Brooklyn is all gentrified, the Bronx and that kind of stuff. But uh, at the time of the blackout, there was a looting spree. And so, if you watch the old hip hop documentaries and stuff, they'll talk about it and they'll say, like, the blackout happened, and then the next day there were 100 more DJs in the scene, because of the looting, and of course the DJs, the DJing was becoming popular, of course, in the hip hop scene at that time. It's the time of the grandfathers of hip hop, and so that was what they went for. They hit the electronics stores and they grabbed these machines, which, I'll remind you, weigh 27 pounds a piece, and and they made off with these puppies, and that's really how the Technics 1200 became the staple turntable, for DJing. Of course, at the time we're talking about, cats like, DJ Flash and that kind of stuff that are just inventing turntablism, like the first DJs to start using the turntable as an instrument, right? The first DJs that are cutting the breaks, the first DJs that are mixing the records to create new music from those records. The very first crate diggers. Um, yeah, so very cool history behind these machines, and a lot of that starts with the blackout. And actually, while we're talking about that real quick, talking about the foundations of the hip hop scratching and cutting, um, which again is the foundation of everything that we do as DJs. I mean, I'm not talking radio DJ. I'm talking, club mixing, and obviously, um, turntablism. So these things, when you get them new, They come with this big, thick, heavy rubber pad on the top, and the reason for that is for vibration dampening. Again, they were meant just to, originally they were intended for listening to records, and they're great at that, by the way. But it's us crazy DJs who started doing things that our parents would yell us at, like touching the fucking record while it was playing and backspinning it and doing all of these things. So the DJs started to make some little modifications with that, right? Because those big heavy rubber pads are sticky as hell, and you can't slide the record over it. So if you were manipulating the turntable, you had to manipulate the whole wheel, right? Very heavy. So what we do now is we take that big rubber mat off and we put on these thin, slippery little fuckers. In the OG days, you'll see cats used wax paper. They would cut a circle out of wax paper and put that down. And now, of course, slip mats being a very necessary item for turntablism, we have some pretty awesome technology. I am a huge fan of butter rugs myself. DJ Kubert's butter rugs. They're super, super thin, super slippery, super fast. As I said, I had these custom made. They're a little bit thicker than a butter rug, but they have a very nice, slippery bottom, and it's a little bit grippier than a butter rug, which I like because I like to be able to count on the record to start playing when I'm done doing my thing. I want it to drop on time, and so a little bit more sticky is nice for that. Let's pop out one of these guys. So of course, upstairs in my turntable laboratory, I have a pretty good collection of scratch sample records, which are pretty neat. Raziel says his slip mat is purple crushed velvet. Ooh. That sounds nice. All right, so this is a control record. We call them CVs, control vinyl, and all it is a tone. So if you were to like put this through the, oh shit, I have a little crack on this one. Must have got dropped at some point. Look at that. There's a little crack. I bet I did that when we were doing the Wicked Party at Zuzu. Never noticed that. Anyway, it's in a place that doesn't matter. So hey, anyway, the what's actually recorded on here is just a tone. It just goes wee. But Serato, of course, reads that and turns that into positioning information, and it's also incredible, and I can't even. But you'll notice that on my record here, I've got this stripe of tape on there, and that is for queuing samples. So now, on records that have sound on them that are not control records, right? On sample records or just whatever your regular old records. What we used to do was you would take your record and it's got the samples on it or whatever that you want to work with, and what we would do is we would take little pieces of tape, and we would notch the piece of tape, like make a little slant of it, so that when we put the needle down on it and cued it, it would like the needle would just go thuk and fall right into the groove that you wanted it to be in the place that you wanted it to be, and that would be your marker for where that was. And you would see DJs using the wax pencil to draw a line to where they were. You'd see the records would be marked up with a few different lines, and you'd see the stickers. If you watch the old like DMC battles from like the 90s or whatever, you'll see a lot of the DJs, they have the little stickers, the little cut angles, and they'll put it in there, and they're like, and it's right where it needs to be. Now we have cue buttons that do it digitally. So what we do is we put a mark on here that that acts as it's like a clock, right? That's 12 o'clock. And so instead of using the needle as our guide, we're using that as a clocking. So like your ah sample might go from 12 to like 4 o'clock, so you know it's ending about here, and that's the room that you have to work with, right? Is this amount of space here to work your sample. The other thing that we do, the other reason that we have it marked is, you know, if you're playing a break and you're, you know, juggling between the turntables, um, you're going to see how many times it goes around. So it's like, you know, kind of go around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and then you cut to the other record and you rewind it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and you know you're back where you want to be, so that you can drop back to this record again, you know, and play those breaks. So that's why we do that. Let's get into some of the things. Like at the moment, I don't have my weight or my head shell and needle on the machine, because I'm going to do that in a minute. But I wanted to talk about a couple of the other things that we do to the turntables these days. You know, like obviously DJing has evolved an awful lot since the 80s, since the 50s, you know. DJing has evolved an awful lot, and like got to get things out of the way. You can kind of see my I have a whole box of tools and parts and stuff over here. You can kind of see it in the corner, but that goes with me any place that my turntables go, because it's got my extra needles, it's got my extra cartridges, it's got my multimeter in there. I've got all the things that I need if something goes wrong. But let's talk about a couple of things that we do to these machines these days. What have I got in this bag? This is a tone arm. This one's actually a bad tone arm. I replaced the tone arm on an M3D that I have the turntable. I still have that turntable. I love it. And I bought it broken so that I could fix it. These fucking things are expensive. Like an actual Technics 1200 proper Mark II toner, like Mark II, Mark III, they all fit the same. They're really fucking expensive, and at the time it cost me like I think $175 to replace just for the part, man. But the reason that I'm pulling this out is I want to show you this one thing. Before I go any further, I want to show you this one little thing here. I hope it'll show on the camera. I'm going to get closer. There's this little screw at the very top here. It's like a double screw. There's like an outside ring screw, and then there's like a screw in the middle. I just want you to see that real quick. Right? If you fuck with that, it's going to cost you $175 or more. Don't ever touch that fucking screw. Don't ever touch that fucking screw. Don't ever touch that fucking screw, because that is what ruined this tone arm. Is somebody thought, I don't know, maybe they thought that they could take it apart, or maybe they thought that it needed to be tightened or loosened or something. No, never ever touch that screw. That is one of those screws that was set at the factory, and you will never get it right again. If you touch the screw, you fuck up the tone arm. Don't fuck with that screw. So that's an important thing. It's why we're so careful with the tone arms. Like, what you're not seeing over here in the corner is the thing the toolbox is sitting on, and that's the flight case. I know I've said before, flight cases, protect your investment, you know. These things are really not cheap. I mean, these things still go for $500, $600, $700, like really good condition ones. and ones that are well modded. You know, definitely $700-800 easy. Um, you know, I'm one of those cats that buys them at parts quality, you know, and there's still a couple of $100 just, you know, for a parts machine. But here, let me show you the bottom. And first of all, you're gonna see how many fucking screws are. I believe it's 17 screws to get in there. And I am not going to take the bottom off of the turntable today. There's no reason to. But I do want to show you something that I've done here. Right. So if you can see over here, one of the things that we always kind of hated about the Mark IIs, about the old Technics turntables, was that the jacks were hardwired into. There's a little PC board inside this, which I'll show you in a second. There's a PC board in there that the output wires were literally soldered to, and so one of the things that would that would happen is, like, over time that solder would break. Turntables getting moved around, getting used and stuff like that, and so all of a sudden you'd have like a channel out on your turntable, which sounds like shit. And it's become a difficult and costly repair, because you got to take off the feet and all 17 screws and get into the layer and solder the things back together. So one of the clever modifications that we do nowadays is we put in RCA outputs instead. So the jacks here are soldered to the PC board in the same way that the original cables were, but now, and of course we get the 90-degree angle ones so that they don't stick too far down. And now we can just swap our RCA cables in and out, and it saves so much wear and tear. And once you have done that modification, well, I mean, that's the number one thing that goes awry on these things. The number one thing, the number one thing I see in forums: why is my Serato not working with my turntable? It's probably because there is something going awry with the output, and it's probably that wire. Here, I'm going to lay this back down here. There are other things that it could be, and I'll jump onto that in a second. I think the important thing to remember here, and an important thing to remember anytime we're talking about DJ equipment, is signal flow. And the source of your signal is those impressions that are pressed into the record itself, and then the needle is picking that up, and there's a magnet in here that turns it into an electrical signal, and it runs all the way through. It goes from the head shell to the output. We're going to get to that in a second. But it's an important thing to remember. It goes all the way through. There's little wires that run through the tone arm and come out the other side there, and it all ends up coming out this other end here. So know your signal path. That PC board that we were just talking about. So there's another thing that you might notice on this turntable, is that I don't have a grounding wire on it. Your turntables have to be grounded. So usually there's a little turntable wire, and what you would do is got a little what you call it on the end, and you would screw that into the little hook, and you would screw that into the back of the mixer, where there's a grounding point on the back of the mixer. But another mod that we started doing with these things, because those break, and that is also tied to that very same PC board that we were talking about, that the output wires are. So what that PC board looks like is basically like this. It's this little tiny, here, I'll take it out of the bag. The originals are green. This is a modified version I'll talk about in a second. Right. That little guy. So what we would do with the original PC boards is we would take the ground wires and then self-ground it to the turntable, to the negative side on the outputs. And this particular one is made by Jesse Dean Designs, and it is a self-grounded PC board. So now instead of doing the ground wire, which would go, you can actually see it traced in the, you can't see it on this camera. It's not going to show you enough detail, but you can see it traced in the PC board. And what we would do is we would do that exact same thing with a piece of wire. And that's what's in this. I don't have one of these in this particular machine. I started using these after I modded this machine. So this machine has the original PC board in it with a wire that does what this now does with the circuit, which is self-ground the machine. So I don't need to wire it to a mixer and all that. Don't have to remember to wire it to a mixer and all that. What else do I have in there? I have so many turntable parts around, it's crazy. And we do a lot of cool modifications with these things too. Like, you can change the LEDs, the color of the lights and all that kind of stuff. I did one of my friend's turntables with all blue lights and it looks really neat. But moving right along. So should you find yourself, with your Serato not working on your turntable and it's not showing up in the oscilloscope right and all that kind of stuff, like I said, it could be the output wires, it could be the input side of things too. So I'm going to try to show you inside this tone arm. I don't know if you can see, there's 4 little dots inside that, and those are the contacts. Those are the contacts that the head shell connects to, which are the 4 little bumps on the head shell. All right. And so that connection is something that can be problematic. You have to keep those clean, and you have to keep these clean. I'm going to strongly caution that you do not do the old school lick it and stick it kind of thing. That might work temporarily, but over time causes more corrosion. I also don't recommend using alcohol in these things. The best way to clean those contacts is to get just a regular old pencil that fits in the barrel there with a nice solid eraser on it and give it a twirl. And I think I actually have just a pencil in my toolkit over here. It might be in my DJ bag, but it's literally, I keep it just to stick the eraser in there and give the contacts a quick cleaning with the rubber eraser. And same thing with this, just real quick with the rubber eraser, and that usually takes off whatever corrosion or crud is on there, and you get your good connection again. Yay! How do you figure out, here's a quick question for you, how do you figure out if it's, the wires or if it's, something's wrong, obviously there's all these fine little wires in the head shell too, those all matter just as much. How do you figure it out? So something you ought to have in your kit is just your basic cheap ass multimeter, right? Very handy thing. What's beeping at me? Did we lose Diana? Is that what happened? I think we may have lost Diana here. I'm not sure. Diana, do we have you? Hmm. All right. Pardon me. One moment. We're gonna try to get Diana reconnected here, and then I will talk about the multimeter. Oh my gosh, that's so horrible. I hope you didn't have to hear the Skype. Okay, there she is. All right, we've got Diana back. I see a question up there. I'll get to that in 1 second as well. All right, so multimeters. We're back on multimeters. The reason that this thing is so useful. Are we good here? Yeah, can you hear that little beep? So we use this. Each one of those little dots, it correlates to the jacks here. So like, so what I would do is I would test each one of these by touching the dot and then touching the corresponding uh, part of the jack there, and that's how I know if if I'm getting good signal all the way through. It's called a continuity test. Very easy to do, and these things are pretty cheap at Home Depot or whatever. Don't need a fancy one, just need one that you can check the continuity on. How do you know what setting to set it on? Here, I'm gonna hold this up and show you how to know what setting to set it on. So what you'll see is the little audio waves looking thing there. That's the thing that says I beep. So you want to set it on the thing that says I beep, and that's how you do a continuity test. Easy, right? So let's see, Diana, you've got a question up there. You want to give it to me in real time so that we'll know your microphone still works?
All right. My question is, how do you take care of turntable noise?
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask you to define noise. So you mean like the
Mm-hmm.
um
And the noise of the motor, like the noise of everything going on in the turntable, or the noise from the turntable to the table it's sitting on.
haha. Oh, yeah, okay. So that there's a few answers. I have a few answers for that. Let me see. My first answer is this shit. It's called Groove Glide. And what is that? It is record cleaner. And this stuff is like, oh, it's miracle juice. Like if you've got old records, get yourself some Groove Glide. Like Diana, you need this shit desperately. Because you've got a lot of old records. You've bought a lot of used records. Anytime you buy used records, get yourself some Groove Glide. I mean, I'll tell you this, the smart used record salespeople, what they do is they get the records in and they clean them and they add 50 more cents. I'm telling you, this stuff is great. So the way that you use it's a little spray can. You spray one pad and then you pat the pads together because you don't want it to be like too much liquid. And then you go around the grooves and clean them out and then use the other side and you dry it. And what does it do? Well, first of all, it gets the very fine microscopic dirt and oils out of the record. And of course, when we're DJing, especially scratching and turntablism, we're touching our records a lot with our sweaty, oily, no matter how much we wash them, filthy fucking human hands. And it leaves a lot of crap in the grooves. And so I use them to clean my control vinyl and all that stuff. Like before you start the show, you give it a quick Groove Glide. And then that way it's getting all those oils out and all that crap out of the grooves nice and clean. And it also is anti-static, right? And as we were talking about before, electricity, magnetism, same thing. When you hear the electricity, it sounds like snap, crackle, pop. It's, you know, it's like got that little staticky sound, right? You know what a staticky sound is. And you know, part of the reason that you'll get a staticky sound coming through your needles is because there's static electricity buildup on the turntable. Of course, rubbing a vinyl record back and forth across a piece of purple velvet is going to create static too. You know, so what your slip mat is made of will matter to some degree, although probably not that much if your groove glide. If you use the groove glide before your show, it won't matter for the next 5 or 6 hours anyway. You know, you're not going to build up that much static. Um, but that is your number one way to get rid of noise is to get the noise making crap off of the record itself. The noise making crap being the dirt, oil, fingerprints, sweat, salt, and static off of your record. Number two, soft paintbrush, and make sure your needle stays clean. If there's fuzz on your needle, there's fuzz in your sound. You're gonna get fuzz on your needles. I there. Okay, here you go. I'm gonna show you something that is like this is hen's teeth now, man. These things are like hot and high demand, and I feel very fortunate that I have a handful of them. But this is an unopened needle and needle and cartridge kit. The M44 7s, the OGs. You can't get these anymore because the machine that they made them on broke. And they are like the number one most favorite of all time needle and cartridge. So inside these little packages, there's a little stiff brush that its job is to brush the dust off of the needles. So, you know, when you're performing on turntables, I keep the little brush like in my, like, you know, I'll have this all packed in the flight case, and I have the little needle brush. It sits like right here. I have a little slot for it that I made in the foam, so that I always have a needle brush with, actually it's on this side because I set up battle style. But I keep that little brush there, and you know, you just do it dozens and dozens of times during a night where you just give it a quick, you know, because it's on the, you just give it a quick little swipe. Official DJ Loki out there. Monster set last night, buddy. Rubbing it gently. Yes, with the groove glide. You want to give it a nice lubrication and rub it gently. Yes. Treat it with love. Okay, other ways to get rid of noise. Okay, so we were talking before about the big rubber mats that these things originally came with. The reason for that is that it prevents vibration, right? Having a big, thick rubber mat on it is a better way to listen to your records, you know, if you're not slip cueing. If you don't need to slip cue and scratch and stuff like that, hell yeah, you know, use the big rubber mat. You know, if you need to hold the record off so that you can drop it in on something else and have it on time, yeah, slip mat. You know, so yeah, you're going to get more vibration that way. Of course, the thing has feet on it. The reason that it has these big chunky shoes, these big platform boots on it in the first place, is that they're rubber. And they're like little shock mounts in there. Like they screw in, but it's like you can see it. I can kind of bounce it there. Like those are shock mount feet that come on the thing in the first place. When you put it into a flight case and all that, it's all packed into foam and stuff as well. So you're getting, I mean, like if you bump the table, you bump the table, but you're not getting a lot of like you're not getting vibration from the speakers and shit, which is why these things are there too, is like, you know, because you'd have your stereo set up and your speakers, and like, you know, the bass vibrates a little bit and all that kind of stuff. And oh my god, I've DJed in rooms where the subwoofer is like literally underneath the DJ booth, and like, you know, and so everything is like all the time, even the turntables. Like, you know, the problem with that is that you can get feedback, especially through the bass, into the things. What do you do then? Then you need shock mounts. So what we used to do is take an ashtray like that. I have the cigar knocker in here for my glass bowl, but it didn't come with that. Um, you would take ashtrays like this, because, you know, you used to be able to smoke in nightclubs, and you take big rubber bands like the kind that you get on broccoli bunches or like asparagus or something, and you take the rubber bands and you'd make a little star of the rubber bands and then put them underneath the turntable. um Hopefully if it was installed, they would be installed on bungee, you know, on nice tight bungees, so, you know, so that it would stay stable. You could like work the thing, you know, but that the bungees would absorb the bass vibration and it wouldn't feed back into the turntable. So that's a handful of ways to get rid of noise and vibration. Um, you know, like I said, in most cases, if you've got it mounted all up in a flight case with the foam and stuff around it, there's really, I mean, you would have to be in a really rotten situation to get vibration through all that. I mean, the whole point of those is that, like, you know, if you drop it, your turntables are hopefully okay. You know, they're, you know, it's all quite well packed in the first place, you know, and then of course, the 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 lid of the flight case has molded blocks that keep your platter from moving, from falling off, from banging around as well, which, you know, that's, you know, we were talking about the magnet before. When you buy a turntable, pop this puppy off and look at the condition of the magnet, because if the magnet's all like cracked and chipped and shit like that, that is not, it's not a good magnet. It's not going to be consistent. It might function, but you're not going to get your proper torque and stuff. And torque is actually a really important consideration. I mean, I think, what is it? These have 2.3 pounds of torque. Is it 2.3 or is it 2.7? I think it's 2.3. Um, you know, a lot of the modern turntables, they have adjustable torque, and it'll have like the classic torque setting, which is the same torque setting as these. Again, being the sort of flagship, the standard, and then you can dial up the torque, so it actually, it's actually, well, it's faster, is what it is. It grabs faster. Um, you know, learning to play with Technics 1200, to do it well actually requires a little bit of finesse. I mean, just starting a record requires a little finesse, because it's like, I don't really know how to describe it, but any DJ that has played on these things for a while knows what I'm talking about. Is that you give it just that little bit of goose in the beginning, just a little tiny with your fingertips. You just kind of, so that it pops in right away on the beat. um, what am I talking about? I'm talking about goosing and dragging. Let's talk about goosing and dragging real quick. How is everybody keeping up here with the attention deficit disorder, that is my namesake? Goosing and dragging. So again, we were talking before about how the Mark II is the first model that has this, you know, nice big full throw 8 up 8 down pitch fader that, you know, is mimicked on all of the controllers and stuff now. So one of the differences between the Mark IIs and the later models is that it clicks in the center. I don't know if you can hear that over the microphone, but it has a center click. It goes click, click. It's a little ball bearing actually that's in there, and it goes click, 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 click. And that's how you know you're at 0, and that's your quartz lock. Um, the later models, they have removed that click, and you can modify, your OG Mark IIs and take that little ball bearing out, and it won't click in the middle anymore. I don't mind it. I find it kind of useful to have it there because then when I'm playing and I'm setting up a mix, um, I don't really, if I'm not scratching, I'm not really touching the record, right? I want to, I'm mixing this record to another record. They're not exactly the same tempo, and so I've talked about this before, like where you use the pitch fader to kind of swoosh it up and then back to it, swoosh it up and back, and bracket in your mix. So sometimes having that click there is kind of handy because, like, when you're going too far because the click is there. Um, but yeah, so goosing is speeding up the disc a little bit, and dragging is slowing it down a little bit. And so you can use the pitch fader to do that, and then return it to where you were. Or if you're like really close on your beat match, right, and you've got it bracketed down really nice, now you don't want to mess with that too much. You only want to like like little hair movements, little tiny hair movements to adjust the motor speed just that little bit more. So instead, then what you start doing is you get physical on the platter itself, because as I said, the platter is part of the motor. So when the platter's running, if you touch the edge of the platter, it slows down a little bit. If you pinch the spindle and twist, it speeds up the motor a little bit. Just a little breep, 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 and you can hear it too. If you're actually playing something, you'll hear it like a little breep, and that's how you goose and drag properly on a turntable. There's other ways you can do it. You can use the label. All the shit's over there, but you can use the label and kind of press down on the label and give it a little goose like that, or you can press down on the label a little bit and slow it down just by pressing down. But that can stop the record, like stop the record for a second. If you're like half a beat off, you do, and you stop the record for a half a beat. Let's see. Oh boy, holy shit! Is that an hour already? I can't believe it. I feel like we have barely gotten started. I just like looked at my watch thinking, oh, it's going to be like 2:30. Where did the time go? Frantic Sack, DJ Frantic here has something up on the well, I'm sorry that you missed the beginning. Twitch can be a pain in the ass sometimes, Frantic. I'm sorry that you had login issues there. It will be on YouTube later. I usually get it up on the same day. Of course, we're multicasting over to Facebook right now. So once the show is over, if you want to catch it again, just pop over to my Facebook page, and it'll be there. And what's the story up here from Frantic? Here's a fun fact. I recently took to a shop to get DJ Tech turntables fixed because they apparently weren't working properly. And the guy told me he couldn't fix them because the parts that I needed, they don't have anymore. And I thought that was really interesting, really funny. So yeah, we were talking about that early. Yes, we will have to continue this next week, Diana. We will. I think, well, I don't know. I guess that depends on what people want to talk about. I mean, I feel like we have covered a lot of ground, some pretty interesting stuff, but I'm going to have to watch it back and see how far I got, because I don't know. I never even got to I didn't talk about like the weights and balancing and any of that kind of stuff yet. So maybe we will go on a little bit further, but unfortunately, to do that, I had to clear off my entire controller from the table, bring all this stuff out, and I have to put it all back together because we've got a show next Saturday night. We've got a Wicked party to do. Um, so I don't know. We'll see how far we got and then decide. Um, on the parts question, Frantic, we were talking about this earlier. Like a few years ago, I had to replace this tone arm. This is the bad tone arm on my 3D, and the tone arm cost me $175 at the time because finding original parts is really hard. And you know, I suspect now they're going for even a lot more because you know there's less and less of them out there. Like I said earlier, I'm the cat. I will buy turntables for parts. I will buy a whole fucked up turntable with a bad motor just to get the tone arm. If I can get the whole turntable for $100 and there's a $200 tone arm on it, that's a win for me. But for most people, it's a pointless buy, right? The replacing the tone arm is a complicated job. It's not a complicated job if you're fairly handy with electronics and you're good with a soldering iron. Like I don't think it's a time consuming job. And it's a very particular job. And if you don't have the experience and you know like a good hobbyist in electronics background, it is not something you want to fuck with. Um, you know, like I said earlier too, I'm a turntable mechanic. I'm a Technics 1200 mechanic. I wouldn't trust myself on other turntables the way I trust myself on these things. I know them inside and out. I know all the bits and what not to touch and all that kind of shit. Um, like doing a tone arm job is it's a pretty advanced job. As far as some of the other parts, that's one of the things that we were talking about earlier too, like the modification parts. You know, the PC boards that Jesse Dean designs those I don't know how like available those really are either. Like, you know, that's just, you know, he's just a one person workshop. A great does all kinds of great parts for modification for your portablism. You know, we were talking before about the you know the portablist turntables like the Newmark PT01, the Omni. There's a new one actually now that's kind of hit the portablist scene, and I can't remember who makes it. I don't have one, so if I could have them all, I would have them all. But yeah, finding original parts for these things more and more of it is becoming unobtainable, and sometimes the best bet is just to buy a fucked up you buy two fucked up turntables to make one good one. You know, finding the original pitch faders can be really tough. Yeah, finding a lot of the parts can be pretty tough. But that is actually why it's really important to know what you're doing when you're buying a turntable in the first place. Like if you're, you know, you're obviously they have the new Technics 1200s are not Technics 1200s. Okay, I'm just gonna say that. Like the new one, they have a totally different motor. It is not the same thing at all. It's not the same thing at all. It's not the same thing at all. You know, when you're talking about, you know, the 1200s or the, you know, the European market, they were 1210s. And you're talking about the original runs where the parts are interchangeable. Like sometimes you will have to use parts from a later model and put them into an older model or whatever, but they're interchangeable and you can do that. You know, as long as you know the specs of which parts do and which parts don't, you're okay. But it can be really hard to get the parts. We were talking before, like finding these things, you know, they were like $50 or $60 or something new in the first place, and now people pay like hundreds of dollars just for the fucking needle. You know, the original M44 sevens here are unobtainium now. Like I said, they can't make them anymore because the machine broke. So now there's a replacement model, which is the N44 7, which, you know, I'm going to say this, probably none of us would really notice the difference, but OG is OG and hardcore is hardcore. And I will say this, some of the cats that are, the top turntablists and that kind of stuff, they don't want to fuck with another needle because, every small thing that changes the entire dynamics of what you're doing when you're at that level. So you don't fuck with that, and that's why these things are are you know pound for pound worth more than gold, to quote White Lines. That particular needle. um that said, those needles are the kind of thing, like if you're playing on records, those needles, I mean, I'm gonna say having those needles does make a difference. Like they're fatter, boomier, heavier, the whole 9 yards. When you're talking about using control vinyl, that matters a way lot less. Like the dynamics of the needle itself matter a way lot less, because all it's really picking up is control tone, which is wheat. And so for control vinyl, so how to let me do this real quick. I know we got to get to Space Couch. We're running late. It's a long show today. Here's your classic, your classic Technics head shell there with the M44-7 installed cartridge and needle. And so if I'm playing actual vinyl, like real vinyl, that's the needle I'm going to use, and it's heavier. And like, I didn't explain the whole counterbalancing thing. That'll have to be another time. These the ortophones, um the Concords, I love these for control vinyl. They are a bit lighter, and but the nice thing, I really like that little notch, so you can see the needle through the notch, which you cannot with the other ones. And it's a nice detail. But they pick up really well for control vinyl. They're a bit light for boomy records. Like if you're spinning drum and bass vinyl, it's probably too light, and you'll get more uh, um, disconnection from the record on the boomy parts. But for picking up control vinyl, these things are fantastic, and they cut like butter without doing any damage to the record. And so I really like these for cutting and scratching on control vinyl. But again, if you're going to analog vinyl, you cannot beat the combination of the original head shells and those nice fat Shure cartridges. Um, he said making sure that it's got a little needle protector on there. Yeah, make sure your needle protector is on. Yeah, it's like keeping safety on your gun. You don't want to fuck your shit up by not putting that on. All right, so Stanton STX portable. Yes, yes, it is the Stanton, Diana. Yeah, you nailed it. That is the new one. I don't have one of those. I do have a PTO one that I've pretty heavily modded with Jesse Dean parts, and I have an Omni which I have not modded at all because it's perfect the way it came. Like, it's everything I ever wanted in a portable to begin with, so I see no reason to modify that. I could talk about modifications on another show too. Modify. I love the old Rain 56 and 57 mixers, and I've modified mine a bit for turntablist purposes. Getting the cut points closer and that kind of stuff, and um, you know how how not to wire your faders, like, but anyway, um I think at this point, though, episode 12 here needs to end, and we need to get rated over to Space Couch, um, and call it a show. It went by awfully fast. I hope it did for y'all as well. I hope you enjoyed the little dippy dive into my all-time favorite machine, the Technics 1200 Mark II. Beautiful, beautiful machine. As I said, it's been a quick hour and we've barely gotten started. So I apologize to all of you turntable geeks out there who expected me to do more. Diana, will you please rescue me and fucking lungs, I can't laugh anymore. Diana, would you please rescue me and tell these nice folks all the cool things that are coming up in the next week or two or three, and then we'll say goodbye and raid over to Space Couch.
Well, coming up this Wednesday, we have New Music O'Clock on MTV TV, hosted by Unit Code Machine. And then Saturday on twitch.tv/Addambombb, we have The Wicked Party at 8 p.m. EST. And next Sunday, we have another episode of Musically Minded, where we might talk more about what we've been talking about today.
Yeah, we tend to talk about this kind of stuff. Jaffra Music comments, cool stuff to hear about. I've not been a DJ, but I've worked with a few, so it's a nice dark art to hear about for me. Which is, in fact, exactly why we started doing Musically Minded in the first place, was to give people a peek behind the curtain at the DJ world. And it was my friend Ben, who's a high school buddy of mine, so he's old too. That Dusty Chin on the Twitch. He had asked me, he had said that he would be interested to get a peek behind the curtain, more of an understanding of what it is that we DJs do, why we do the things we do, why we make the decisions that we do when we're performing, all of that kind of stuff. And that's why we started Musically Minded in the first place. I mean, Diana and I have a shared library of books about music and brain science and science and music and brains and stuff like that. um, so that's so that's what we talk about. Of course, we're always happy. I'm always happy to answer questions. From my own experience, 30 years as a professional DJ, nearly 30 years as a professional DJ, and a bit of amateurism too. Obviously, in the last 11 episodes, we've answered a lot of questions. We followed a little bit of DJ Frantic's career story here, answering some questions that are relevant to all DJs, but that have been specifically relevant to their career. So I've been enjoying it a lot personally. I can't wait to see what happens as we go forward into the future. Like I said, always happy to answer questions, technical questions, um, any of that kind of stuff too. I've got the Patreon, ADDAMBOMBB, just like everywhere else on the internet. Happy to answer questions over there. Of course, if it's something I can answer quickly, I will. And then maybe we'll discuss it on the show as well. If it's something that's going to take some discussion, we'll do a show about it. Say anywhere on social media, you can ask me anything, anytime. I'm in a lot of the DJ groups, just kind of there to help people with problems and stuff, so it's not like I don't have problems myself. And of course, the way that I learned all of this stuff was by looking over other people's shoulders as well. And so that's what I hope that we're being, I hope we're being effective at that, doing Musically Minded. I mean, I'm feeling pretty good about it. A dozen episodes in, and so thanks a lot. Thank you all for being here. Um, I'm glad you're all. You know, you guys are so nice. Look at you all up here in the chat. Um, does my heart good. It really does. You know, DJing is something that has been the hugest part of my life. I've been DJing more than anything else in my life at this point, you know, and it has been the foundation of all of my experiences for, you know, like I said, more than half of my life. And it's something that I love and care deeply about, and the culture of DJing is something that has been very important to me. You know, being part of DJ culture and hopefully extending DJ culture and advancing DJ culture and evolving DJ culture. Like, you know, I have the advantage, I guess, of being an OG, but the disadvantage of not, you know, I'm not going to be here in the future, and I can't even imagine what creativity there will be to come as the tools get even better and better and better. This episode was important to me because this machine, this beautiful fucking machine, is the foundation of all that we do as DJs, and I think it will be forever. I think everything that we can possibly imagine into the future of DJing will still be based fundamentally on how this machine operates and how we interacted with this machine in the beginnings of DJing. And so thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Diana, DJD42, making this journey with us week after week after week. Um, I think the best thing for me to do right now would be to put on that theme music and rate us over to Space Couch. Thank you so much for your support. Much love to all of you, and have a great afternoon. Bye bye.